Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at Special Booster 1.5, and Special Booster 1.5 definitely added a lot of new powerful and interesting tools to think about utilizing, but unfortunately blue is one of those colors like yellow and red where a lot of its core is behind the starter deck, so I am going into this under the assumption you're at least going to have one copy of the starter deck. But regardless, Special Booster 1.5 definitely adds a lot to the card pool to make some really powerful and interesting decks, especially on a budget. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Wanyamon. So Wanyamon is a pretty okay Digitama. It's not the best, but it's not the worst, considering everything we have access to doesn't really synergize with the deck, especially on a budget. Wanyamon is just one of the better options that we have access to, just because his inheritable ability still could matter. So what his inheritable ability is during your turn, while the opponent has 2 or more Digimon with no Digivolution sources in play, then this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP. So we do kind of want the DP buff just because it makes it that much easier to attack into the opponent's Digimon or attack into their security with and have our Digimon live. And we are going to be playing around with the sub-theme of attacking their evolution sources, so it's not like it's impossible that Wanyamon would never go off. And then the other Digitama of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Tsunomon. So Tsunomon is just another very subpar Digitama, but again, like Wanyamon compared to everything else that we have synergy and interactions with, Tsunomon is really the only one that has anything to do with the deck, and he's still definitely a pretty decent Digitama just because he has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP while battling an opponent's Digimon that has no Digivolution sources. So the whole idea behind this card is we could at least try to get a DP buff to hit over the opponent's Digimon to at least remove them. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Elecmon. So Elecmon is just that value vanilla card, really good for tempo and efficiency. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gomamon. So this version of Gomamon from BT-01 is pretty nice because he has this nice inheritable ability where on delete we get to gain 1 memory. And that's really the only thing we're utilizing the card for, is just this inheritable ability to have something. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the starter deck Gomamon. So this version of Gomamon's pretty decent because it's basically the exact same thing as Elecmon. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Gabumon. So this Gabumon from the starter deck is pretty decent because he has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking, we get to trash the Digivolution card off of the bottom of one of the opponent's level 5 or less Digimon. So this card is really good because we are going to be trying to play around with the sub-theme of trashing the opponent's evolution sources, so that way our higher level Digimon could gain some additional benefits, and there's no better way to do that than with Gabumon. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gorillamon. So Gorillamon is kind of like a flex spot where this could be anything you really feel like you want it to be. It's just I value the tempo and efficiency that this card adds just because it has an evo cost of 1, making it that much easier to get up into our higher stages that much faster. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Garurumon. So this Garurumon is from the starter deck, and it's basically doing almost the exact same thing as the Gabumon, except the Gabumon can only hit level 5 or below, where this version of Garurumon can hit basically anything. So that's just really, really good, just so that we could always make sure we could trash the opponent's evolution sources, so that way we could take away their abilities, and we also gain some benefits on our higher levels for them not having any evolution sources. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Grizzlymon. So Grizzlymon is just the blocker of the deck. Blockers are still pretty important, so we need to run them. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Monzaemon. So this is kind of like another flex spot in the deck where this could really be anything you feel like you want to utilize. It's just, again, I value the tempo and efficiency that this card is bringing to the table, just because the low play cost compared to his level makes it that much easier to get into our higher stages with. And then he also has a low evo cost, so that way, even if we need to evo him up, he is, again, just another really good stepping stool to get into our higher stages with. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of WereGarurumon. So WereGarurumon, this version is from the starter deck, and he's pretty nice because he has this powerful inheritable ability where during your turn, while the opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources, then this Digimon gains Security Attack +1. So Security Attack +1 is a pretty decent ability to add, just because he allows you to put so much extra pressure onto the opponent's security and hit for more than one security just to try to close out games faster. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 2 copies of MetalSeadramon. So MetalSeadramon is still just a pretty decent Digimon for the deck just because this card has some pretty decent utility and is a pretty decent game finisher. So what this card is doing is it has a very powerful on-play ability where you get to return 2 of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon back to their hand. So this is already just pretty decent just because bouncing is a huge anti-tempo mechanic. So just already being able to try to anti-tempo the opponent is pretty decent. Plus you're removing 2 bodies off of their board that they're then going to have to try to replay. And if they replay them, then there's a chance that they're not going to have any inheritable abilities if they need to just raw play them. So this is really good at taking care of blockers and some various other Digimon. But he also has another really powerful ability, which is the main reason why he's in the deck, where during your turn, this Digimon can't be blocked by the opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources. So most of the blockers in the game are going to be level 4 or 5, and the fact that we could very easily pick off those evolution sources just means MetalSeadramon is going to be unblockable more often than he's not, and just making him unblockable after the opponent has all of their security gone just allows you to end the game that much more easier. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Vikemon. So Vikemon is a really powerful Digimon for the deck and is the main Mega of the deck, just because this is the best payout card that we have for trying to attack the opponent's evolution sources, or him just passively being really powerful because the opponent might just happen to have a Digimon without any evolution sources. So what this card is doing is it has a really powerful ability where during your turn, while your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in play, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP and Security Attack +1. So him hitting the security for 13,000 with at least 1 extra security attack is definitely really powerful because it adds so much pressure onto the opponent, and the DP buff also makes it so that he can live a little bit easier. So pair this up with, let's just say, WereGarurumon, and he could potentially hit for 3 security, and that's just pretty decent on top of any other interactions that we might be stacking him up with. And then the last Mega of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Plesiomon. So Plesiomon is a pretty decent Digimon just because he has a very low Evo cost with some very high DP, and he's just another very powerful tempo tool for the deck to be working around and playing around with. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Hammerspark. So Hammerspark is one of the best, if not the best, blue option card that we have access to, and thankfully it comes in the starter deck. So if you already picked up a starter deck, then you already have your playset of Hammersparks. And that's just pretty good because it has a play cost of 0, so it's just free to use, and its main ability is really powerful, in which you get to gain 1 memory. So this could act as a huge extender to a lot of your plays and make a lot of plays that normally wouldn't be possible. So just this 1 memory can go a long way depending on how you utilize that 1 memory. And then on top of which, it has a very powerful security ability where you get to gain 2 memory. So you're effectively taking away 2 memory from your opponent, and that could be really brutal depending on where you leave the opponent's memory at. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Cocytus Breath. So this is our big removal card, where what this card is doing is it has the main ability of returning 1 of the opponent's Digimon back to their hand, and then you trash all of their evolution sources. And then it has the very powerful security ability of activating its main ability. So for all intents and purposes, this is basically the Gaia Force of the deck, except it's not deleting the opponent's Digimon, it's bouncing them. But all we're looking to do is just utilize this card to get rid of a Digimon from the field. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer of the deck, and that's going to be 2 copies of Matt Ishida. So this version of Matt is pretty decent because he is going to be the memory fixing tamer of the deck. So anytime our memory is less than 3, then he's always going to set it to 3. So this is really important because it makes a lot of our plays that much more efficient and that much more easier to make. And then on top of which, he has a really nice ability where during your turn, when you play a blue Digimon, you could suspend this tamer to trash the bottom Digivolution source from one of the opponent's Digimon. So this is really nice because this is just a good passive way at also trying to attack the opponent's evolution sources, making it so that our primary aggressive Megas are going to be online with their abilities as often as we can make them. And then there's just a whole bunch of other really powerful cards that you could think about playing around with, especially on a budget or not on a budget, depending on what you want out of the deck. So you could think about utilizing Upamon just because Upamon is one of the best Digitamas that Blue has access to, because this is the main card draw engine of the deck, just because he has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn. If your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources, then you get to draw one card. So he's just fitting on theme and drawing us cards, making him really, really powerful. So if you do want to attack the Evo sources a little bit more, you could think about running more cards to just do that with. Ikakumon is pretty standout just because he is trashing the top of the opponent's evolution stack, where stuff like Magna Angemon, Garurumon, and Angemon are attacking the bottom, but just having the redundancy in the ability makes it easier to see and more consistent to try to play. You could think about running Dolphmon just because Dolphmon is one of the best, if not the only way we could really DP boost our Digimon outside of our Digitama. So if you're just looking for a DP boost, he's also fitting on theme, where he'll give 1000 DP to the Digimon he Digivolves into, as long as the opponent has a Digimon without any Digivolution sources in it. So again, just a good DP booster. You could think about utilizing Tsunomon just because Tsunomon is another very fantastic Digimon, because his on-play ability of drawing 2 is pretty good if we're stuck, or if we want to utilize his inheritable ability, then his inheritable ability gaining us a memory when we're attacking, as long as the opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources, is just a very good ability to have overall. If you want another budget Mega, you could think about running Saber Leomon just because he has this powerful when Digivolving ability where you get to trash 4 of the opponent's Digivolution sources. So this is pretty unique because it's just any 4. So if they have a slightly larger stack in, let's just say, Arachnolordmon, then you get to choose which 4 you're going to be trashing, and that's just pretty decent. And then if you just want another card to interact with the fact that they're not going to have any Digivolution sources on their Digimon, Shikuamon is definitely really powerful because he'll give all of them that don't have any Digivolution sources Security Attack -1. So that's just another really powerful interaction to be playing around with. On top of which, he also is pretty unique because he is a yellow Digimon that can Digivolve off of blue, and during your turn on the field, he is treated as a blue Digimon. If you want to run a couple more DP boost cards, Arctic Blizzard is pretty good because it's fitting on theme with the deck, where you get to trash one of the Digivolution sources off of one of their Digimon, and then one of your Digimon gets plus 2000 DP, so it just makes it easier to hit specific numbers, and you're still trashing an evolution source. But you could run Mad Dog Fire just because it's plus 3000 for 1, but it doesn't trash any Evo sources. But Mad Dog Fire is also pretty good because it has a good security ability of allowing us to draw one card and add this card back to our hand, where Arctic Blizzard just adds it back to our hand. You could think about running the Ray of Victory just because being able to bounce a level 5 or lower is still pretty decent, so that way you could cut them off before they could go into their Megas. And then if you just so happen to have a blue Tamer in play, then you get to unsuspend one of your Digimon, which is both good offensively and defensively, depending on how you use this card and how much memory you have. But having the security ability of activating its main effect is also really, really nice. And then because we are playing blue, you could also think about utilizing Omnimon just because he's Omnimon. You could also think about utilizing Loader Leomon and, similar to Loader Leomon, Bastimon, just as alternate level 5s for the deck. Loader Leomon is a little bit more powerful on the DP, but is a little bit less tempo efficient. But Bastimon is still pretty powerful on the DP and is more memory efficient, so you get your option and pick there on which card you feel like you want to utilize. And then one of Blue's more powerful cards that they have on the rookie level is going to be Gabumon. So Gabumon has this nice on-play ability of drawing us a card, and card draw is always good. And then you also have access to Vmon. So this Vmon is really good because he has jamming, so that way you could start aggressing onto the opponent's security very early on. Because we are playing the Gomamon that gives the inheritable of on-delete, you could also think about playing Leomon because he naturally has an on-delete ability, so you could pair them up for some very powerful synergy just to gain a whole bunch of memory. You could also think about utilizing Airdramon, just because Airdramon's really nice for his security ability on being a security Digimon. So a surprise Digimon sometimes can be very, very powerful and can swing games into your favor. And then as far as some other tamers that you could run, Joe is pretty okay, because if you're really trying to attack the opponent's evolution sources, then just Joe being able to gain you an extra memory for doing that is pretty good. Davis is probably the best memory fixing tamer we have access to, just because he is also acting as pseudo card draw, where we get to check the top 3 and add a blue and a green Digimon. Since we're not really going to be playing any green Digimon, we're always going to be adding a blue, so that's just already really, really good. And then if you feel like you could also just run the starter deck mat, just because the starter deck mat is another generically decent tamer at being able to gain you memory for the opponent not having any Digivolution sources. So as you can see, there's just a whole bunch of different cards that you could think about utilizing to really customize the deck and make the deck your own. But for the most part, this is what the deck is just trying to do as a whole. It's just passively trying to attack the evolution sources, so that way it can make cards like MetalSeadramon and Vikemon that much more powerful. And it's a pretty simple and straightforward deck with a whole bunch of room for customization based on what you feel like you want to gain out of the deck. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below. And also down in the description below is my TCG Player affiliate link. So when you buy cards off of TCG Player using that affiliate link, some of the money will end up going to support me and the channel. And as always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you in the next video.